Anyway, hi everyone. I'm Dan Drasin. Good to see you all. Today we're going to welcome Vicki Talbott, and who is a veteran EVP, an ITC practitioner, as well as Lance Reed from the UK, who is likewise a long-term and experienced EVP practitioner. So what I'd like to do first is, as an introduction, is to play the trailer, 5-minute trailer for my documentary Calling Earth, which is about EVP and ITC.
I think the fact that we survive bodily death is a scientific fact. It's nothing to do with religion.
One day in the summer of 2002, Martha Copeland of Lawrenceville, Georgia, played back a sound recording she'd made earlier that day and heard the voice of her daughter Kathy disciplining her dog. That wouldn't have been so unusual, except that 6 months earlier, Kathy had died in an auto accident.
One evening, to my great surprise, with some equipment I was developing at the time, I heard a voice. I was really startled.
After the second or third test, I immediately got voices saying, "We are the dead, we are alive, we are able to think and to speak."
A brief definition of the electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP as we call it, would be the existence of voices of unknown origin which appear in tape recordings particularly, but could also be recorded in other ways.
It was the voice of my late father, and he addressed me with my nickname he used when I was a little boy.
Here was this voice that I recognized immediately as my mother.
I know, great. Happy birthday. Love you. Happy New Year.
The voice then calls the experimenter's name, Konstantin Raudive.
This is Konstantin Raudive speaking. I'm as fine as a dead one can be.
The experimenter states that in his opinion, man cannot grasp the events after death with his intellect. A voice replies in German, kann. He can.
If somebody came up to me in the street and said, "There's nothing paranormal about EVP," I would say, well, I believe in experimental evidence. I've done at least 20 years and hundreds of experiments, and I know that it is a paranormal effect. Now, how many experiments have you done?
When the phenomena expanded into pictures, faxes, computer messages, actual phone calls, another term had to be coined, and that became instrumental transcommunication, or ITC, which basically means communication through instruments.
International conferences held in the United States and Europe have drawn ITC experimenters, scientists, engineers, psychologists, and medical doctors from around the world who share their experiences, present the results of their research work, and discuss methods for better understanding the nature and meaning of ITC.
Whoa!
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness, this is very clear.
Oh, check that out. That's totally him. Oh my God.
It's objective evidence. So It has changed our lives completely.
Science appears to preclude the possibility of an afterlife, but science evolves and there's no knowing what possibilities may be acceptable to a future science.
Maybe it's a superstition, maybe it really happens. The only way to find out is to study the phenomenon and find out whether it happens or not.
We should be devoting enormous social resources to this question, not leaving it up to a matter of belief.
Vicki and Lance, please unmute yourselves and I'll introduce you once again. Vicki, I've known Vicki for ages, since we first, since Tim Coleman and I first first shot the first parts of Calling Earth, which the production went on for about 15 years. And but Vicki was one of the rock stars of the film from the get-go, and I very much admire her work and her perseverance and all the love that she's put into her own personal ITC work, as well as with her group and as a spokesperson and a wonderful representative for the field as a whole. And Lance, I'm just meeting for the first time, but Vicki, who's worked with Lance for ages, I'm sure will give us a wonderful introduction, and we'll take it from there. So Vicki, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dan, for the great introduction. I'm happy to be here today and to introduce Lance. This is the first time that we've actually interacted, Lance and I, face to face. It's all been online for all these years through old Yahoo groups and all the way through the AAEVP groups, all the way up to today with our blog. So it's just really great to be here with Lance. I've known Lance, it feels like, for ages. We go back, I don't know, Lance, you may remember the first group we found ourselves in, but we go way back. And, way back to the early Big Circle days. And so that's like 20 years, I'm thinking, almost probably 20 years, right?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing I appreciate most about Lance, well, he's absolutely the kindest, sweetest, most loving person on the planet. But aside from that, when it comes to this kind of work, Lance is just as much of an experimenter as I am. We'll do anything and everything. We'll try anything. And that's what I love about Lance. And when something works, he's so eager to share and so happy to share how he did it with everybody. And we've really grown a lot together over the years. And I've learned so much from Lance that I don't know what I'd do without him. He's currently part of the blog that the two blogs that we have, Welcome to Eternity and Messages from the Big Circle. And he's been doing some excellent work in all different kinds of EVP, and he'll talk to us about those different kinds, like the transform and the opportunistic types. And I'm really excited to hear him share and share some of his work today. So, Lance.
Brilliant. Lovely to meet you all. We go way back, Vicki. I think it was 2006, January 2006. I started with the Big Circle and the AAEVP.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, the rest is history, as they say. Yeah. But it's been a journey, still continue a journey, innit?
It certainly is.
Yeah.
So that's where we first met up, was in 2006 then. And that was one of the old, was that the old Yahoo group that we had?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Wow.
The Yahoo, and then you went to the forum then of the AAEVP, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a question, and that is actually for both of you. Going back before you started working together, how did each of you discover EVP? And tell us about your very first efforts and experiments. Vicki?
So quickly, I first discovered it by reading an article. I believe it was 1993. I used to get the Noetic Sciences Review, and I pulled it out of the mailbox, and on the cover was this information about ITC, and inside they had Jurgensen showing up on, I believe it was Maggie Harsh Fishbach's television. During his funeral, his face shows up on, their TV. And so I was reading about that and reading about EVP, and Braden and I decided, he was about 12 at that time. So I told him all about it. That's my son who's passed, for those of you who don't know, and told him all about it. And so we decided to try recording that night. And we listened back and thought we heard voices, but we didn't have any computers at that time to fool around with it, to amplify the noise any more than it already was. And we weren't quite sure whether it could even have been somebody outside in the middle of the night. At any rate, that was my first exposure to it. We never did it again. And then he passed. And then I just reminded myself, I remembered about it, and I found the Big Circle online. So that's how I started.
And what was the Big Circle online at that time?
Well, at that time, that was the AAEVP, so the American Association for Electronic Voice Phenomenon, and they had a couple of moms already, Karen Mossy and Martha Copeland, whose kids brought them together. And I guess this is a really fascinating, interesting thing about the Big Circle, is that Braden had already joined the Big Circle before I did. So that when I got there, and this is how they got together too, our kids on the other side were bringing us together here. So that when I got to the forum there and said, I've lost my son Braden, then all these practitioners start, oh, well, I've got a clip with Braden's name in it. We just thought these were so clear that we'd keep this Braden guy, all his clips around. And so they had, like, I don't know, a lot of them, like, Braden's alive, he's not dead. Some of them you played in the trailer. There were several that they had saved. So that's what I found very fascinating, and still do, about the Big Circle. They bring us together here from the other side.
And can you give us the links to the current blogs and websites for everyone's benefit?
Yes, down in the chat area.
Okay.
You want me to do it down there?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Let me see if I can, if I can get in there. Okay, I'll go ahead, and you can go ahead and ask Lance about his.
Okay, Lance, take it away.
2005, I was reading World ITC, Mark Macy's site, about ITC and EVP, and I was blown away. I thought to myself, I could do this, to get proof of an afterlife first of all, but then after a while, I was, how can I say, I wanted to help people, to reach out and help, and there was something there that everybody could hear, everybody could listen to or see, and I thought it was, in my opinion, better than mediumship.
My opinion, and similar songs.
That's my Alexa. Alexa, shout out. Goes off all the time.
Ask her to mute herself, right?
Yeah. Alexa, mute.
Now, had you been interested in, in afterlife communication, and you had personal experience of the people close to you passing and communicating in any way, how did you come to this?
Well, I sat in a development circle in 1993, going to 95. for mental mediumship. And then it started from there. Life happened then. And in 2006, like I say, I was very, it came back to me. And I thought, let's do a bit of research and whatnot. And I think it was in preparation for my mother and father passing together within 3 weeks of each other in 2007. And I think I was being prepared by the other side to go through that grieving process. That's what looking back on, I think, you know.
And from there to EVP.
EVP, I started recording straight away. And I picked up a man's voice saying Hayden. Meant nothing to me at the time. But I was speaking to the next door neighbour, and she said that a gentleman, Hayden, before I moved into this house, had passed in the bathroom in the house. He had a heart attack. And I thought, wow, it's just amazing. Like, so what I done then is recorded on a regular basis, started the EVP forum, joined there, and the big circle, and recorded ever since.
Wonderful. Would you like to play us some samples of your work, maybe some early ones and some recent ones, or however you have it organized?
All right. Let's have a look. I share the screen. These are some earlier ones with Transform EVP with 2 digital recorders.
And why did you use 2 recorders, Lance?
Because the theory of it is that if one EVP turns up on one recorder and not on the other, it's you know, it can happen, but it's a confirmation that it's a true EVP. That's the theory, you know. But there again, I have had 2 EVPs on the 2 recorders. I don't know, like.
Were they identical?
Yes, identical. But mostly I just get them on the 1 recorder, you know. But I'll play you some of these ones now. This one's from, I was trying to contact Debbie Crusoe from the Big Circle. She's deceased now. I'll play this one.
I still work for the Big Circle, Debbie. Are you still working in the Big Circle on the other side now?
Can you hear us say Big Circle?
Mm-hmm. I heard it.
Okay.
I'm curious, was the background noise in that recording, was that something that you added, or was that system noise in the recorder?
That was a system noise. What I normally do is set the recorders to long play mode, because you have enough internal noise to for the other side to speak. So it was all internal noise off the old Sony recorder that I used to have. Okay. And that transformed them into a voice, come out of nowhere. We have this one then. May God bless you. I was closing down the session. Right there, see if I can play her. Not getting nothing by her a minute because it's like try this one. This one I was asking my great grandfather. He died in World War II, and I said, "Are you with your wife and family?" And he says, "What I hear is Susan, which is my grandmother."
Your wife and your children now in the afterlife.
Can you hear that? These are all off digital recorders, these are.
Okay.
Um,
Can you play that maybe twice more?
Yeah.
There's a sort of tradition in
wife and your children now in the afterlife.
Can you hear that one?
Yes.
Okay. These ones, they're not, there's nothing coming up for these by you.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
It's trying to click on the image rather than if your background image. See how you've got the little dots on the side? Click off to the
Right.
side somewhere and then go back and see if that helps. Yeah, it's trying to.
Yeah. Should I put it to presentation?
Yes. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Brilliant.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
God bless you, my fish for you. God bless.
Do you want me to play it again?
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's, playing it maybe 2 or 3 times.
God bless. God bless you, my fish for you. God bless.
This one is an interesting one. I was asking, I think it was my mother.
You got anything you'd like to say now? Anything at all?
Wow.
Yeah, these are all, like I say, through the digital recorders. There's no background noise, only the internal noise. When I play back on the digital recorder, then that's the results.
Please play that one again. That was really wonderful.
Okay.
You got anything you'd like to say now? Anything at all?
Wonderful.
And this one, my mother's name is Sonia, and she's deceased. And I was asking my grandfather, is he with my mother in the afterlife? And I'm hearing, I don't know if I can see that there, but I'm hearing, I'm with my Sonia.
Dadu, are you with my mother, Sonia Reed?
You hear that one?
Yeah, once again,
play it
please.
again?
Yeah, sure.
Dadu, are you with my mother, Sonia Reed?
Wonderful.
Okay. I haven't got no more of the transform, but what I done then, I experimented with the gibberish style method of Sonia Rinaldi uses it. And
Can you explain
I got
that?
some of that. Yeah. If I go by the gibberish, what I do, I play a software. It's called Agronaut Luna, and it plays a gibberish file like this. Basically in the background, very low, and I record with a digital recorder again, 2 digital recorders, and the basis of it is granular synthesis theory that musicians use to have an input signal, and they destroy that signal, and then it's rebuilt with new music basically. But in our case we use voice to destroy the voice, and then the other side transform it into an EVP. So there's the software by here. Okay. And here are some that I've had. I was recording for a lady known as Cece, and her husband, Lad, had passed, and she wanted me to try and record for him. This is what I had. Cece really misses you, lad. Have you got a lovely message for her, please? I know, Cece.
You know what? No, please, Lance, please feel free to play each one 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cece really misses you, lad. Have you got a lovely message for her, please? I know, Cece. Cece really misses you, lad. Have you got a lovely message for her, please? I know, Cece. Lovely one, that, isn't it? This one I was trying to contact for the big circle again, and there's a young girl come through saying I can talk and I like to talk. Are you happy?
I will talk because I want to talk.
Very sweet.
And again.
Are you happy?
I will talk because I want to talk.
Are you happy?
I will talk because I want to talk.
Okay, and this one, I was asking for Karen Mossy, her son Rob from the Big Circle, and he speaks before I ask the question. He says, "Hi, where's Mom today?"
Hi, where's Mom today?
Is Rob there? Karen Mossy's son, Rob.
Hi, where's Mom today?
Is Rob there? Karen Mossy's son, Rob. Can we play it one more time?
Hi, where's Mom today?
Is Rob there? Karen Mossy's son, Rob. Okay. And this one is another one from the Big Circle. And a child's voice again. I'll play this one. What is the afterlife like? Can you describe it to us, please?
It's beautiful. It's all
What is the afterlife like? Can you describe it to us, please?
It's beautiful. It's all
Okay. And this one is Tina Lorette. I don't know if you've heard of Tina. She was from Wales, where I'm only about 20 miles on the road. But Tina was an EVP researcher. And I'm trying to ask her, does she remember me? And I'm hearing this. Tina, it's Lance. Do you remember me?
It's me. We haven't get to later.
Tina, it's Lance. Do you remember me?
It's me. We haven't get to later.
Tina, it's Lance. Do you remember me?
It's me. We haven't get to later.
Okay. And this one is from the Big Circle again. And connect to help the grieving and suffering in the world. Connect to help the grieving and suffering in the world. What I found with the gibberish is you've got to be careful that there's no false positives, because a lot can, you can make your own mind, your mind will work with it. But when I played it to everybody else and in the Big Circle and other people, they seem to be hearing what I'm hearing. So that's a positive as well, Do you want me to move on?
More.
This is my new work with 3 radios, this is. And I'm using white noise. And what I've discovered is on the VHF FM channel, just under 88 megahertz, there's like a fluctuating sea ocean sound noise. And I've been using that, and I find that brings some voices out. I've had a few direct radio voice too with that. So there's my...
Just to be clear about this, what we're about to hear is actually coming out of the radio. You're not just using this as background for recorded EVP. Is that correct?
Well, initially I use it for EVP, but if I'm lucky enough, I've had 1 or 2 direct radio voice come through that I've heard in real time, you know.
Okay.
There's the settings I use. Here's what it sounds like, you know, on the experiment. And I use 3 radios, EM pump, IR light, UV light, and various crystals on the radio, which I find that seems better, you know. This is one, my Uncle Will. I was trying to contact my mother's Uncle Will. He was a physical medium in his lifetime, going back in the 1930s, 40s. And I've had a few voices and EVP come from Uncle Will. And I asked him, is there any thoughts we could better the signal? And this is what he said.
Thoughts on how we can enhance the contact this end, please.
Can you hear that?
Thoughts on how we can enhance the contact this end, please.
And as I was closing on that particular session down, I heard somebody, it's just the story of it was, I was talking to my son about this gentleman named Philip who passed in the Falklands War only a day before. And as I was closing the session down on Uncle Will's session, I heard a voice come in just very lightly at the end say, Philip. I don't know if you can hear him.
God bless you. May peace go with you, Uncle Will.
Can you hear that then?
God bless you. May peace go with you, Uncle Will.
It's, like I said, it's still early stages yet on this method, but I think we're getting some groundway. Now I've discovered that fluctuating signal, you know, on the radio. These are direct radio voice. I heard these in real time.
Have you got a message, Mum and Dad, about the survival of the soul after the physical death?
And you can hear the background noise. They're using that background noise to transform their voice. That's the first thing that I noticed.
Have you got a message, Mum and Dad, about the survival of the soul after the physical death?
Can you hear anybody hear that? Yeah?
Just hear it, yeah.
Yeah. And this is a bit tougher to hear, but I'll play it.
Reaching out to my spirit guides. Welcome the contact through the radio or through the EVP. reaching out to my spirit guides. Welcome the contact through the radio or through the EVP.
There was something after that. I can hear "we love you" and something after that, but I can't make out what's being said. But these come through real time, like I say, through the radio, and I heard them live. So I think that's about it, really. And there's the links to my website and the big circle.
Hey, Lance.
Yeah?
How did you come about including the lights, the pumps? I'm not quite sure what they are. Somebody's asking what an EM pump is, and an explanation is given there. But I'm just wondering what made you decide to have the red light and the certain pumps and the certain, do you have certain kinds of crystals, or how did you come about that information?
I seen a very old YouTube video. Somebody in Spain was using the IR light. You see, this is the kind used for physiotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And they reckon it enhanced the signal and the UV together, enhances the signal. And with the EM pump, that is it pushes out EMF, which hopefully will enhance the other side to use, to come through easier. That's what I use that. I don't know if that works, but I think it's doing something,
Yeah.
But I hope so anyway.
Yeah. Curious about how you came about that setup. That looks very interesting.
Yeah, it's just, it was just trial and error, really, I think I'll take that, try it. If that works, if I get positive results, but if not, I take it away and add something else,
Got it.
I just go on my gut, really,
I think, Lance, I just want to commend that approach. And partly because we don't understand how this works.
Yes, exactly.
There are clearly multiple forces involved in relating with consciousness itself. And if we're trying to plug our crude technology into something that's as subtle and sophisticated as that, I think the better in this situation, the better part of science is just to throw whatever you have at the wall and see what sticks.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Until we have a better theoretical foundation for it. This is something that people like Gary Schwartz and others are struggling with, and trying to match our technology with levels and layers of being and information and subtle energies that we have very little grasp of. I sometimes use the metaphor of that ITC is like, imagine two railroad trains on tracks that are kind of going like this randomly and paralleling each other, but the tracks go like this, and there's only one open window in each train. And ITC is like trying to throw a spitball between the two trains when the windows happen to line up, and we have no idea what makes them line up. I don't know if you've heard this, but I've heard that ITC works better during the waxing phase of the moon, that sort of thing. Have you or anyone here heard anything like that?
Well, going back years ago, everybody had a big moon on their website, where they was doing paranormal research because of that, the phases of the moon. I don't know whether, thunderstorms I've heard as well create good energy, and I've had some good results during thunderstorms. But I haven't taken much research on the moon, but I suppose it's plausible,
I suppose people would have to sort of coordinate in a really tight way to do these kinds of experiments.
Yeah.
For all we know, it may depend on besides the phase of the moon, other astrological configurations, the energies, the subtle energies that pertain at any particular point in space around the Earth. The skull experiment was said to have been as successful as it was, partly due to the earth energies in the physical location in the town of Skoll. That there was said to be an intersection of what are called ley lines there.
Ley lines, yeah.
And that made it that much easier for the communications to take place. Other people feel that where there are deposits of quartz, like quartz crystals in the earth, that those areas are said to be more energy, charged with energy, and also information. And again, how who's going to fund the experiments to prove these things?
Yes, exactly.
So, but I think it's important for us to keep, when we do experiment, we do throw stuff at the wall, to keep track of what we've done and what the results are.
Yeah.
So we can go back and check it at different times of the day or the year and so on.
And another thing, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I think consistency is one of the main practices. You've got to be sincere and consistent. It's like, if you just do it once or twice and think, oh, there's nothing in this or whatnot. But it's sincere, to be consistent and persevere. I think that the other side, then, if they're there and they want to communicate, it'll naturally happen as well. So I think that's a good thing.
One other thing we've heard, and this is in my film, that if you do your experimenting or your attempts to communicate at the same time every day,
yes,
that is supposed to enhance the frequency of contact. Is that something that you have done or can speak about?
Yes, I tend to, round about this time really in the night, about 10 o'clock, when the house is quiet, because I like it to be very quiet, and I knock my internet phone on airplane mode, so there's no internet on my phone, nothing like that. And I feel that by doing that way, we got a consistent pattern. And I also, about 15 minutes before, I like to meditate and play some music, relaxing music, and I feel that helps as well, with the communication. Just to play some ambient music.
Right. This might be a good time to ask Vicki about her practice in EVP. And you've mentioned how you got started, but I know that you've tried various techniques and various technologies, going all the way back to the tape cassettes and the answering machine, which was, I think, your first direct communication from Braden was on an old tape type answering machine. Right. And so can you say more about how your work has progressed and the kinds of experiments and trial and error and so on that you've done over the years?
Well, I'm kind of like Lance. Whatever, I'll try anything once, twice, 3 times, and then if I'm really convinced that it's got to work, I'll be consistent. And usually, if I've got a hunch that something is going to work and it doesn't work the first couple times I try it, I'll keep at it because I'm feeling like I'm going somewhere with it. And usually I end up getting results. Now, sometimes they're not spectacular and sometimes they are, but I continue to experiment. And I have done both types of transcommunication. That is the opportunistic way and the transform way. And we didn't really talk a lot about, we mentioned transform, Lance, you did in your talk. But if we could just quickly separate those two.
Please, that's very important.
Yeah, basically the digital recordings that you heard Lance playing at the very beginning, those are all transform. And it did say transform EVP there. It's really hard to find good definitions of transform versus opportunistic, but I'll give you the simple definitions. So transform EVP is where you're not purposely introducing sound and most likely vocals. So if you're not introducing anything other than maybe ambient noise in the room or a fan going, something like that that isn't charged vocally, and you get EVP on a digital recorder, that's considered to be transformed, because what they're doing is they're manipulating the sound that's available in the device and or atmosphere to create words. So sometimes those transform EVP can sound very, very human-like. Other times they sound whispery, gravelly, robotic sometimes. But that's basically your transform side. The opportunistic side is where you introduce gibberish, foreign language, and usually we consider it opportunistic if there's some sort of cherry picking going on. That is, spirit is picking sounds that will end up making sense. So if you do a radio sweep, then 3 syllables may come out, Rebecca, out of the whole radio sweep, and you're asking for somebody named Rebecca. Okay, so that's considered to be opportunistic. So when we think of radio sweep, or when we think of doing gibberish, especially when the vocals are loud and you're playing the vocals fairly close to where you're doing the recording, it could be considered to be transformed if you are using vocals that are at extremely low volume, and there's not the cherry picking going on that goes on when you're doing, say, the kind that Lance was talking about with Sonia's gibberish, where it's louder. But Lance, I heard you say that you were doing some with the volume really low.
Yes.
Does that mean it was extremely low so that you couldn't even hear what was being said and you were that far away from it?
Yes, I put the recorders about 2 meters away from the gibberish, and it's on lower sound feeding to the room, like.
So when you look at the wave line of that, when you download it onto, or when you put it into WavePad or whatever, Audacity, is it pretty much a flat line?
Yeah, well, you can see the spikes, but it is pretty much low, like it's lower than the actual sound.
So that can be considered to be transform as well. Tom's not really specific about absolutely no vocals being used for transform EVP. So in situations like that, where you're not hearing the entire, the recorder is not recording the entire thing, then that can be considered to be transform. Especially when you
can I interrupt here for, excuse me, Vicki,
Yeah.
1 second. Lance, are you still sharing your screen?
Yes, yeah. Do you want me to just knock it off?
Yes. Remove it now so that everyone can see who's talking. Great. Okay. Yeah. I also, Vicki, you mentioned Tom. You might say a few things about Tom and Lisa Butler and who they are and so on.
Tom Butler and Lisa, they're the ones that run the Association Transcommunication, which used to be the American Association for Electronic Voice Phenomenon. And actually, I did want to mention too, when we were talking about time of day and whatnot, Tom tried to get a study going that dealt with sidereal time and EVP. And unfortunately, he couldn't get enough participants. So he couldn't do it. And that's another problem is, once you figure out what you want to do and how you want to study it, it's a matter of who is willing to and can participate in the study. So he had to drop the idea. But he has done a couple of studies, such as the 4-cell demonstration, and that information is up on his website, atransc.org. He's got a ton of stuff on there, a white paper on EVP that goes into a little bit of this transform opportunistic stuff. But things have changed so much in terms of the gray area between transform and opportunistic that we really have to revisit our definitions And Dan, you and I have talked about this in the past too. Our acronyms and our definitions need some work.
Yeah.
Right. When you Vicky, you've also brought up a really important point, which is that, the ITC community tends to be loosely organized. It's not easy to coordinate, really tightly controlled experiments with groups of people and so on. And so that's, I don't know how one gets around that other than by trying to get a study funded. And as I understand it, there are only one or two organizations on the planet that fund even sort of mainstream parapsychological research. There is the Bial Foundation, which is one of those, has been funding a study by a professor at the University of Western Ontario on EVP through cell phones. And I'm trying to remember his name. Probably know it. Iman Sparush. And he's been studying this sort of thing for a long time. And his study is in progress right now. And I had some correspondence with him last year, and I'll probably pick that up soon. And then, maybe we can ask him to come on the gathering sometime and speak about his results. I've heard a lot of people are getting it through the WhatsApp app.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, and not just the straight text app. But again, I'm not directly connected with that, so I don't know. But it sounds promising. Now,
I've got a message on, you know how you can, I guess, I don't know how this happened. I've got a picture of it, but you know how I guess you can ask Siri certain things. I don't know what, but I was talking about the new word in French, phrase in French for ménage à trois, because I was watching a show in French and they called it something else. They didn't call it a ménage à trois. Okay, so a few days later, I look in my photos. I was looking in my photos for something and I see this black screen with a little white lettering on it. So I open up that photo and it says, Mom, it's called a ménage à trois.
Great.
I'm like, what? How did this get there? And, he didn't give me, I'm still trying to find out what the new colloquialism is for ménage à trois. He called it something else. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what it is, but Braden's like, no, it isn't. It's called a ménage à trois.
Peut-être c'est un ménage à quatre. Ménage à cinq.
Oh.
So, now a lot of this discussion, this is one of my favorite questions to ask, and that is, what's paranormal? To me, paranormal is a social definition. It's not a scientific definition at all. Yeah. And the reason to me that it's not scientific is that there's such a taboo in the culture that there's no way of finding out what's normal or not. I mentioned this in my book, that how do we know that our next door neighbors don't have rollicking conversations with their dead uncles every Tuesday at 9 p.m.?
Yeah.
How would we possibly know? I mean, who would admit it? Yeah. So, but I think that probably most of us would agree that we have encountered in casual conversations with people when they feel, safe enough to talk. We've heard all kinds of things that people have experienced, and is usually preceded by, don't tell anyone, but.
Yeah.
No. So I remember years ago when I first became interested in the work of Rupert Sheldrake, way back in the 1980s, and he would tell me, he said, you wouldn't believe what scientists and academics talk about in the pub after hours. So, the question is, do we need more proof, or do we need a more relaxed atmosphere in the culture in general? And, how do we give ourselves permission to out ourselves and share information? So that, in sort of parallel to the technical questions, which are very important, I think somehow we need to be asking the question, how can people feel more relaxed about this? And particularly in a time when things are very intellectually and ideologically polarized and sensitive, it's a challenging thing to do. And I like to think that the kind of community that Wendy has attracted to herself here it's a great start. It's one of many forums and discussion groups, but I think it would be wonderful if people were willing to maybe take a little bit more risk in what they're willing to communicate with others. Years ago, when I first started researching the whole UFO field, I would ask people. I said, "Have you ever had a sighting or anything like that?" And they would first say, "Oh, no, that's nonsense." And then they'd say, "Oh, wait a minute. It was this thing that happened to me when I was 14 years old." And then it would sort of all come spilling out. So anyway, maybe it's wishful thinking, but I'm hoping that there will be more of that, and be more willing to exchange our experiences. Anyway, and I'll get off my soapbox now. And Vicki, you were speaking.
Well, I think I was just going to finish up with your asking me what I was doing lately and what I have been doing. And I said I've done pretty much anything and everything I could try, but lately I've been focusing on transform EVP, and especially in as silent conditions as possible. And I've gotten some pretty interesting stuff that I use a digital recorder when I go out, and it's the same kind of EVP that I was getting 20 years ago that I usually will get on a digital recorder. But I've been using my computer, either my Mac or my PC, and usually I like to do it like 4 a.m. or so. So when I get up early like that, I'll do my recording. And I don't know, maybe if I could quickly play these couple that I just got the other day. They're just very interesting. So these were done I'm going to share. These were done in silence on my Mac. Let me see if I can, come on.
So Vicki, was it your Mac that recorded it, or was it your digital recorder that you later downloaded onto your Mac?
So when I'm at home, I just use my Mac. If I'm out and about, I'll use a digital recorder. So here, this one here is really weird because both of these EVP that came through have this weird kind of almost like a radio sound that comes before the EVP. The first one sounds like "love you," and actually it reminds me of Braden a lot because it was the last thing he said to me, but it reminds me of his type of intonation. So you're gonna hear this weird like radio sound and then "love you."
First, love you.
Go again.
First, love you.
Okay, once more.
First, love you.
Okay, so you hear that, and then there's this sound, but and here's the other one at the very end, same kind of weird sound, and then somebody goes "once again," and some other guy goes "that's good." In an app.
Once again. That's good. Once again. That's good.
So it's accented there, whereas the "love you" wasn't, but these are.
Once again. That's good.
So whatever that weird sound is, I have no idea. Usually my Mac voices are real clean with nothing around them. I don't know if it has to do with the speaker or whatnot, and that's not the case with my laptop. But here's one off a digital recorder. Now this is off the Panasonic DR60, and Mary Jo and I just went to a haunted castle and we stayed overnight there. So we thought we'd ask if there were any any spirits around. And of course, every time we go to places like this, it's always just Braden and Jim protecting us. We never hear from any axe murderers or anything like that at these places we go to. So this one, we had asked who was with us, and we were going to take a walk down the hallway, and it sounds like a female says love, and then quickly a male says Braden and Jim. Now this is the Panasonic RDR60, no noise, just internal circuitry with this one. So okay, where'd it go? So love, Braden and Jim. Okay, so we knew that they were with us. And then there's this one more I want to play because Dan and I think that it sounds like Karen. And I had asked for her. So you hear me say, hi, Karen. And then we hear what sounds like finally happy. And it really sounds kind of like her voice.
Karen. Karen.
Finally happy. Once more.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, so and those are all transformed. The only one done on a digital recorder was the Braden and Jim one because I didn't have all my stuff handy.
Excellent.
And there are some others, but that's just what I've been doing lately is focusing on transform only. I actually get tired of listening to gibberish and things like EVP maker and those kind of things. It's just really grating on my ears. Plus, I worry so much about false positives, and I just prefer knowing that what I'm getting is absolutely real. What else could it be, right?
Yeah.
Well, how would you both feel about our opening the session up to questions at this point?
Great.
So
yeah, brilliant.
Anyone have any questions for anyone? Beth, please unmute yourself.
Hello, Vicki and Lance. Thanks very much. This is really interesting. And what I'm interested in is the actual recorders that you use. Are they new? Are they ones you've had a long time? Can you buy them now? Could you talk a little bit about if anybody was starting now, what would you suggest we buy?
Well, for me, I would suggest the cheapest, the crappiest one you can find, preferably used and very, very old. And the reason behind that is the worse it records, it seems the better the EVP is. I think they make use of the circuitry. And in these really old recorders or really cheap recorders that aren't made very well, the circuitry, of course, is noisier, and I think that allows them to make more, not necessarily better, but to make more EVP. So all my recorders that I use, excuse me, are either really old or just really inexpensive ones.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
The noise seems to be the raw material from which the intelligible voices are produced.
Yeah, it's like a palette in it they can use, I prefer the Sony, the old Sony ones. I usually, they're good, the Sony ones, and they're going back, I think it's the B16 series.
And I like the B26, ICD B26.
Yes.
Sony, that's a good one.
Yeah.
B or V?
ICD, B as in boy, 26. And the B16 is also a good one. ICD B16.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sally, unmute yourself.
Yes. So my question is, do you ever have to do any other editing besides just raising the volume? Like, do you clean up the noise? Do you slow it down? I did get a spontaneous EVP one time that I couldn't quite make it out until I slowed it down, and then it was suddenly very clear.
Yep.
Do you do any of that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lance, you do, I do. Sometimes you have to.
Yes, they come through sometimes very quick, the speech is very quick. So it's best to slow them down to so you can understand and appreciate what's being said,
Yeah, and I don't know how much you talked about some of the noises, Vicki, that you get. I find that it seems to be very common to have a mechanical noise at the beginning and a mechanical noise at the end. Have you also?
That's called a precursor click, and even if it comes at the end, they just throw it into that category. Call it a precursor click. There's an article on the atransc.org site about precursor clicks that Lisa Butler wrote a few years ago. And that is true. You can very often hear a clicking noise right before an EVP begins and right after it ends. I just have never heard this kind of radio frequency sound. That's just a really bizarre thing to me.
Yeah, it's a strange one, that is, yeah.
And for it to happen twice and to repeat, that was just very odd, right before the only two EVP that were on that clip. So, but yes, you're right, Sally. Precursor clicks are very common with transform EVP, not with opportunistic EVP.
Right. Yeah. Well, the one I got was on a Zoom meeting, like it was in the recording for the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, so that would have been transform in nature, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other questions? Priscilla, you have your hand in
Yes,
front.
I do have my hand up. How long do you spend on these sessions when you set up to do this? Do you take an hour, 2 hours? What time, how much time do you, I mean, I guess it depends on how long your recorder will run for.
Yeah, I wouldn't spend an hour. That would drive me absolutely right out of my mind. Lance, maybe you can jump in here, but my sessions are normally very short. I'll do up to a couple, 3 minutes per session, and per sit down, I may do 3 or 4 of those. So I may end up with a total of 10 minutes to go through to listen for EVP. It's an exhaustive process, listening for, isolating, and figuring out what the heck we're hearing. Lance, what about you?
Well, I usually prepare for 15 minutes before, and I usually record for 15 minutes session complete, and then you got the reviewing to go through and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like Vicki said, it's very exhausting, but worthwhile in the end, if you get a positive result in it.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Gary?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Vicki and Lance, have either of you ever or heard of anyone recording with an iPhone and getting results?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's possible. And I like my old Nokia E500. Nokia E500. Yeah, it's an old phone. And the recorder on that thing is fantastic. So it's called a Nokia E500 or 5, yeah. And I don't know what it is about that recorder, but some guy from, I think it was Wayne Paranormal on YouTube, was talking about the different recorders that worked and why they worked. And I wrote down all that information and I forgot why, but he did say about the Nokia E500 that he didn't really know why it worked so well, because the phone it's a 2010 issue of that phone. So it's not that old. But he just said it may have something to do with the band, the frequency band that it was willing to accept in the recording.
Yeah.
Mode, I don't know, but all I know is it's a wonderful recorder on that phone.
Interesting. Thank you.
Sorry. I got a Galaxy Samsung, and I've run EVP on there, but I put the Jurgensen frequency off the radio on loop. So I'm recording and having that in the background, very, very quiet and low. And I've had some EVP off there as well. That's off the Galaxy Samsung phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I say, it's trial and error, innit? You know, experiment. Yep.
Any other questions? Regina, please. Unmute.
Whoops, thank you. Vicki and Lance, when you are doing this, you always have to have it basically a very quiet space. I mean, do you get your recording sometimes in a busy day? You come back and play your digital phone, recorder, or nobody has message machines anymore. It seems like everybody's just on their cell phones, but some people do have them. Is the spirit actually borrowing the sound also within the room?
Yeah, I've turned my recorder on so it's been in a place where you would hear crowd babble, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you left the room, you could hear crowd babble. So I've turned the recorder on in a back room, right? So that it's picking up at a very low level. And remember, these are terrible recorders, so it's even worse at picking these things up, but it's picking up enough sound to create EVP. So it doesn't sound like a solid wall of crowd babble. It just occasionally you'll hear, what is clearly an EVP because it's whispered close to you can hear that it's coming out of the device and not from the room.
Fun.
I've done that before. And I've recorded in places where there are people talking. The first EVP I ever got was by accident. Well, not the first one, but one of the first. I brought my recorder with me and it turned itself on somehow, jostling around in my purse, just for this enough period of time for this most wonderful EVP message to be left. I was telling Mary Jo that looking for a pen wasn't important. And so you hear me say, it's not important. And then this female voice takes a breath and goes, it's not important. And then suddenly this angelic music starts playing and they're singing and it goes through a whole phrase of music and ends. And I was just sitting there in shock. I couldn't even imagine such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Native American music you had, Vicki?
What that?
It's like a tribal Native American.
Oh, yeah, I left it on in the seat of my car, the console of my car, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I had it on voice activated. So, there was nothing on there except for right before I get in, I couldn't hear it until I listened back, but right as I'm coming to the car, it starts playing this Native American drumming, singing.
That's right. I remember that.
And then as I'm getting in the car, it's like they hurried up to finish it. So it was like amazing. Yeah. I knew it was just one of the most. I still have that. That's on the blog site too. I love that one.
That's wonderful. What a gift.
Yeah.
It's just so amazing when you hear things like that. You just can't believe your ears. And it turns out, of course, that the college was built on tribal land. What was at one point tribal land. So it was perfect.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Leo?
So yes, we take ours
sorry.
out and about.
Yeah, I'm getting back to the iPhone recordings. I have made some with my iPhone, just
Nice.
outdoors. Just want to just experimenting outdoors with nothing else but the iPhone, and it was whispery, but it was one of I have like a spirits or voices that show up, a certain theme, and it was one predictable voice that showed up to bless me with his recording on just some random day. I didn't even plan to do it, but the iPhone works really well.
How long have you been practicing EVP, Leo?
2016 maybe, 17, somewhere around.
What motivated you at first to try it?
A friend of mine is a medium, a friend I met like a few years before I started, and I saw some videos, and I happened to see videos on YouTube where people were doing this. I just couldn't believe it, and so I had to try it myself. So I started with apps, but I find the just recording out of the the EVP from just you and the recorder to be the most fascinating. But I get the same group of people, group of voices, no matter which, if I'm using an app or radios. Radios are a lot of fun.
So
airplane mode or whatever.
Leo, are you using like the voice memo on the iPhone to record it?
Yeah, I use the voice memo.
Okay, thank you.
And I was going to add that too. Thanks, Gary. Well, maybe sometime, Leo, we can if you can pull together some of your EVP samples, we could do that on the gathering, unless you have them handy right now.
I have a YouTube video with some of my radio voices.
Can you put the link in the chat?
Sure, I can do that.
Great, thanks. Thanks.
Right. Sure.
Good, thank you.
Sherry?
An amazing thing happened a couple months ago. I've been counseling a bereaved father who is a line man. You know, he goes up the pole and adjusts the electricity when we have power failures. And he had his phone in his back pocket and it kept calling me, and it was like a butt call. He wasn't aware of it. And then when I was on the line with my own son, the one who's not in spirit, his number called me again. So I pushed the button, go to voicemail, and I let it just be recorded. And if I can find it, I'll play it for you tonight. But we have a very clear one that says, "We're on the phone." And he said it's his son Cole's voice. So we were so excited because now it just came through voicemail. So whatever sound the iPhone provided was used by spirit. We didn't initiate it or ask for it. So I think it's pretty awesome. The iPhones are very, very usable too, definitely. I'll look for it. If I can find it, I'll let you know.
Brilliant.
Okay. Anyone else? Regina again?
Again, here I am again. I have a quick question. You're doing the recording of the voices and stuff. Have you recorded anything off of a television, like based off a television or ghosting or something like that? Dan's laughing, so I know it's real.
Well, this is a really fascinating story, and I'll ask Vicki to tell. You saw some of the results in that trailer, but I can put them up again on the screen if Vicki would like. Go ahead, Vicki. Please describe. This is a really kind of an interesting and puzzling event, wasn't it?
Very wild event. So it's the middle of the night, and I was trying to get to sleep, and I was sleeping out on the futon in the living room because my husband was out of town, and I was trying to get to sleep, and suddenly the the television turned itself on. And the first thing I saw were groups of numbers, and I could see like shapes of buildings and whatnot. This head came right into view, and it looked like a negative view. So I was looking at a negative. So the head comes into view and he says, "What do you want us to do?" And I'm just sitting there looking at the television. I said, "Well, communicate." And he's like, "Okay, very well." And meanwhile, I noticed the voice is coming out of an unplugged boombox on the floor, not out of the TV. Okay, so all of the voices that I heard, which wasn't a whole lot, it was pretty much just him and then a couple else, came out of the boombox. The rest of it was all from the TV. Suddenly, all these different people stick their heads in, start waving. Then I see Braden and Jim, and we've got this one that Braden's trying to form his 16-year-old high school photo. And it looks so much like it, only distorted a little bit because it's splitting into two and he can't get it quite right. But I ran and got my camera. So I didn't get the first beginning part of it, but I ran and got my camera, and it was in the dark, and so I'm trying to remember the first part of it so I can write it down. But I did record, I don't know, Dan, couple 3 minutes or something. Dan ended up going through it, what I had left remaining. I wish I had kept the whole thing, but I just thought, you're probably not looking at anything anomalous, when in fact probably the whole thing was anomalous. So Dan got to go through it and pick out what he could find there, and what was left of what I had of it. But that was a wild experience, I'll tell you. And I've had voices talk to me out of thin air before, but not on the TV. I've had them come out of the speaker before. But not like that on the TV, and then with the boombox playing the sound. That was so amazing.
Amazing.
I'd like to, Vicki, can I show some of the pictures?
Yeah.
Of the boys? Hang on one second.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
I think I'm switching to another one here. This was the original image, and Vicki, as I recall, you just sort of reached for your camera and grabbed this picture off the screen.
Well, I actually had a couple minutes of film, and then once I put the film onto the computer, I isolated.
Okay.
Yeah, parts of it.
Okay, and this is number 5. Hang on one second again. And this was the final version that I managed to clean up. It's a little blurry, but you can really see the expressions, the faces, and they're interesting, distortions. There are these squiggly lines just from the TV noise. But there's also the face on the right, where the eyes are turned to screen left, and the mouth around the lips is exaggerated. And it's just an interesting combination of kind of REM distortions and genuine expressions coming through. And did you recognize these two faces, Vicki?
I recognized the top face as being Braden trying to emulate his 16-year-old graduation photo. It's very, very similar.
And the other face, is that?
The other face I don't recognize, but I'm with you. I mean, that is wild. The way the eyes are looking off.
Yeah.
side and the exaggerated facial expressions. And I should say, when I said, just communicate with me, that's when all the faces started coming in. And I actually saw one of Jim like pumping his arms, like he's pumping his muscles, showing his muscles. I didn't get that one on the film, I'm sorry to say, but there was also a lady dressed like the 1920s in a flapper type outfit. She came through too. I mean, some of them were just amazingly clear.
And they come through the telly, it did, Vicky, on like white noise, is it?
Yeah. And I don't know what channel it turned onto. It was a regular, I mean, it was a flat screen, I think. Well, wait, it was back in 2006, so maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just a regular TV. But at any rate, I don't know what channel it was on. It just turned on and there was the white noise and it didn't have any regular channel to it. I think it may have had those 8 HDMI, lots of different channels, and maybe it just turned on one of those channels. Something like that. I have no clue because it turned itself off. And when I turned it back on again, it was on the regular TV.
Wow, amazing.
So I have no clue how that happened.
Yeah.
And Vicki, you said that the sound was coming through a boombox that had been had not been turned on.
Yeah, it wasn't even plugged in.
Has that ever happened again with that boombox?
No, I don't think we have it anymore. But it didn't happen again with it after that either. Although I have had voices come out of the speaker. We used to have we don't have it anymore either, but it's one of those long speakers that you put in front of the TV.
Yeah, sound bar.
Okay, we had one of those, and somebody greeted me, came right through that speaker at night. I had just laid down to go to sleep and greeted me, "Hello, Vicki." And I had just laid down to go to sleep. And the only thing I could think of was, please don't say anything else. You're going to wake my husband up and he's going to freak out. Because it sounded really loud. And I thought, oh my gosh, if Pete comes out here and there's somebody giving me a lecture from the other side, he's going to have a cow. Oh.
Well, I think we're about winding down, but I just wanted to relate a little anecdote of my own. I have not done EVP. I've been more of a journalist than a practitioner, and probably don't have the patience to do serious experimentation. Many years ago, I was involved in the investigation of the infamous Mothman. Many of you remember that. So I worked very closely with John Keel at the time, this wonderful writer and chronicler of all things paranormal. And I accompanied him on several trips to this town in West Virginia where all these weird things were going on. It was a great adventure. So I came back to New York, where I was living at the time, after one of these trips, and I was feeling kind of an impish mood. So I wrote a little silly song about John Keel and the Mothman, and played it on my guitar, and I recorded it on a little reel it was a little 3-inch reel of recording tape. Now this is back in 1967, okay? So, and this was the only small reel of recording tape I had in the house. The others were regular size. So I recorded the silly song, turned the machine off, took the tape off the machine, put it on the table next to it, turned the lights off, went to bed. Next morning, the tape was gone.
Oh.
I looked everywhere for it. And I figured, well, maybe when I move out, I'll find it, under a carpet or something. Never found the tape. So this was a case of, perhaps reverse EVP, if you will, the disappearance of the evidence. And I joke that someday I'll be driving along some lonely country road and this UFO will come down and a little ET will get out and has the tape in his hand and say, "Did you lose this?"
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet. Anyway, so I think it's probably...
That ET will look a lot like John Keel.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, thank you for mentioning that, Regina. because as if you know the story of the Mothman in this town in West Virginia, the whole story came to a head in December of 1967, where a bridge across the Ohio River collapsed during rush hour shortly before Christmas. It was quite a major tragedy. And John and I had been told by a psychic in the town that there would be a disaster on the river the night that President Johnson lights the White House Christmas tree. So we were back in New York on that evening, and we decided we would get together and watch TV and see what happens when they light the Christmas tree and all that. So I went over to John's place, and we turned the TV on. We saw the White House ceremony. Nothing much had happened, so we turned the TV off. But when I had arrived at John's house, an old friend of his was there named Joe. I think he'd been an old Army buddy of John's, and John had not heard from him in years. And yet Joe turned up out of nowhere on this particular evening. So I met Joe. He was there, big guy, strong guy, dark hair, mustache, very firm handshake. That's what I remember about him. Anyway, John and Joe went out to dinner, and there was actually a UFO conference in Manhattan on that evening. So they went out to that conference. I went home. Got home, turned on the TV just as the network feed was interrupted with the news from Point Pleasant that this bridge had collapsed into the Ohio River. Fast forward about 5 years. John was walking through Macy's department store in New York and runs into Joe's. Oh, by the way, John, after this incident, John was unable to locate Joe. His phone had been disconnected, just no way to contact him at that time. And this was very strange because Joe had turned up out of nowhere, spent the evening with John. They talked about old times and so on, and then Joe disappeared. So a few years later, John runs into Joe's wife in the department store. Says, "Oh, how's Joe? I saw him a few years ago and haven't been able to reach him." And his wife said, "Well, John died 5 years ago." And John said, "Well, I saw him 3 years ago. What do you mean?" And his wife said, "No, don't mess with me, John. I saw him on his deathbed. I attended the funeral and all that." So, what do we make of this? I had heard of materializations, people materializing, and I was kind of skeptical of it. But here was evidently an example of this. And I can tell you that there was nothing about Joe that in any way hinted that he wasn't an ordinary, solid human being. And so I often wonder how many people we see walking along the street are just visiting.
Yeah.
And how again, the question of what's paranormal, do we really know? Do we have a sense of what levels of illusion, both psychological and social illusion are we living with? Partly because we can't normally easily exchange information about this. So I'll leave us all with that question for now. And I will thank everyone, Kim and Gary and Vicki and Lance and everyone who's asked wonderful questions, and hope you will all join us next week when hopefully Wendy will be back in the saddle. So if there are any other questions, fine. If not, I guess we'll just sign off now. Thank you so much, Gary, for anchoring the tech position today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Vicki.
All right.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
Bye.